Hey guys, Evan North here, back in the video. Today we're going to be doing a review on the Bandai Zetton figure. Now it's very likely that in the past I reviewed the Sparkdoll Zetton figure, but that's different. This is the Bandai one that is 6 inches. I got this at GBS at the $10 bin, so yes, I did end up spending 10 bucks for this, but it has a lot of cons that I need to get to, and you'll understand at that point why it was understandably 10 bucks. So when it comes to the pros about this guy, I can really only say that the detail is pretty good, if not, like decently good. It has detail that spans all across the figures. I really appreciate this kind of scale that we see on the legs here and on the arms. I think facial detail is pretty bland. I mean, of course, they couldn't really do much anyway with Zetton's facial structure. It's not like that requires a whole amount of detail. Like I always have these little lines spanning across the two horns here. I like these black dots which go all across his back. And of course, more scales behind the legs as well, just like there are in front. So let's get into the cons of this figure. That is right, guys. I only have one pro to give this guy, and I have many cons to talk about, so let's get straight into them. So I do have 4 major cons. No nitpicks, 4 major cons. Now, if you'll notice, I didn't count articulation and paint job as a pro, and that's because they are both cons in regards to this figure. So for example, let's start off with the paint job, which I think is the worst part about this figure. For one, I do think that the fact that the figure is largely black, they did that pretty well. I mean, you do have a nice shine to it. But you have to take into account that any other color besides the black is going to stand out. So if you see that looking weird or off, you're able to tell that so easily. So for example, we have these, weird, I don't want to call them anomalies. It's too strong of a word. But fact of the matter is we have this nice silver paint job on this leg. But on this leg, there seems to be less of the paint, and that's because it's faded away. There's also many paint scuffs on this figure, not including the chest here, or on his yellow pecs, if you will. You kind of can see these red scars, and also these, I don't even know what these things are, these silver marks, I'm guessing, with silver paint. We also have more scuffs towards the face, and towards the horn as they're kind of losing it and going towards that black paint. So I would argue that yes, technically speaking, the orange here is a booming color, but let's be honest, if it's scuffed, then it kind of just takes away from that fact. It's also harder to, when you lift both arms up, it's easy to distinct that, well, gee, these arms are both silver, but if you lower them both down like this, given the lighting, if you plan on doing figure photography, you're able to see that this is more silver than that. And it's just weird things like that which really go all across the figure and which I don't like at all. When it comes to the next big con about this figure, that's the vinyl. The vinyl is just far too soft, especially in the face. I don't know what happened here. I get that there are figures that, have a soft vinyl, but this is just like a squishy toy. Next major con is the articulation. I've always said, remember with Bandai's, they should have at least 4 joints of articulation. This has 3 joints of articulation. And the 3 joints of articulation it has is on the arms and on the head. And the head is a little stiff, so I'll count that as a separate con because, a separate joint, again, completely different con. I mean, if it has a joint, it's good enough, but if it has a stiff joint, that just adds a whole layer of another problem. But the fact that it has 3 joints, not 4, really not a big fan of that. Final major con is that this figure, as you can imagine, because this is the case with most soft vinyl figures, has trouble standing. Like I do with some reviews on figures that have trouble standing, usually underneath the camera, I'll have my fingers grab the legs like this. It's soft vinyl figures that really, it's like marshmallow, it's like Jello. So it's much more easier to kind of fall over on the side and whatnot. Anyways, I'd be rating this figure a 5.7 out of 10. This is perhaps the lowest figure rating I've ever given a figure, not just recently, I think ever in the span of all my figure reviews. I do not recommend getting this. I think given the fact that I paid 10 bucks for this, yes, you could say it was worth it. But, considering this is a vintage figure, unlike, with G-Fest where they're giving these things off for cheap prices, it's not often you see them for cheap prices. Matter of fact, you see them for really expensive prices, actually, because like I said earlier, they are vintage. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. Like, comment, subscribe. See you guys later, and bye-bye.